Welcome to the Facts on Fire Prevention series. I'm your host, Chris Spurlock. Today we'll be discussing building a fire-safe home. Each year fire causes 4,000 deaths, 25,000 injuries, and over $2 billion worth of damage to homes. And 23% of all fires are house fires. There are actions we can take to prevent our home and ourselves from being a statistic. In addition to personal precautions, we can also construct fire-safe features into our home. As a homeowner or a new home builder, your goal should be to use design practices that help to prevent a fire from ever starting in your home, that control a fire if it does break out, and that protect your family and your property during a fire. Your home is your shelter. Help to fireproof it.
I had a good friend of mine who went out to a party one time and had been drinking a little bit, and he was tired. Came home from the party and decided he was hungry, so he was going to cook him something on the stovetop. Well, he put the food to warm up, and he laid down on the couch to watch TV and wound up falling asleep. The food naturally caught the kitchen on fire. The only thing that saved his life was the smoke detector. He burned about half the house down. This guy is now a firefighter. It changed his life that drastically.
Let's see how good your fire-safe design skills are. What are the 3 elements needed to create a fire? What are the common sources of heat designed into a home, and how can you make them safer? What heat risks do electrical systems create, and how can you avoid them? What are the 3 main sources of fuel built into your home, and how can you reduce their risks? Keep on watching. We'll be back later in the show to review these questions and answers.
All fires need 3 elements to exist. How many or how few of them are present in our home can determine how fire-safe our home is. Joining me today is Fire Chief Butch Browning. Chief Browning has 17 years in the fire service and is currently the fire chief of the city of Gonzales, Louisiana. Chief Browning, let's talk about the 3 elements of fire.
The 3 elements that make up the fire triangle are oxygen, heat, and fuel.
So what happens if we remove any of those elements?
Well, if we remove any one of those elements, the fire will go out. For example, the oxygen, of course, is the air we breathe, the oxygen we breathe. The abundance of it is regulated by open doors, open windows. The heat, of course, would be a heat source, like a candle burning, exposed electrical wiring. And, of course, the fuel would be things like the interior finishes of a home, couches, chairs, clothing, things of that nature.
So if we wanted to build or live in a fireproof home, all we have to do is eliminate some of these elements or one of these elements?
Sure, we'd have to eliminate one of these elements, and we may have to change our behaviors to control those elements from being mixed together to cause this tragic fire.
Okay, now, eliminating oxygen is virtually impossible. We need it to survive. But let's look at eliminating the second source, or the second element, heat. What happens if we eliminate heat, and how can we eliminate the heat source?
Well, we build a home that's safe, electrically safe, mechanically safe. We control heat sources like electricity. We control heat sources like operating equipment like clothes dryers, curling irons, and all the things that could contribute to the start of a fire.
So what are some ways we can eliminate these heat sources?
Well, we would have to control them through inspection to making sure that if we are cooking, we're cooking food. We're not letting a stove be used that could be left unattended, that could actually start a fire, for example. Another example would be in your heating equipment in your home. You want to make sure that heating equipment's being used when you're home and you're attending to it, not left on to where it could start a fire that would be out of control.
I know today candles, scented candles, they've become very popular. Is that a dangerous heat source, or is that a major concern, something we need to address?
Sure, all across the country we're seeing an increase in fires from the use of candles. They've kind of come back around, if you will. And what we're telling people with candles is, attend them when you have them on. Don't leave a candle burning when you're not in the room to watch it, to make sure that it remains safe.
And is smoking in bed or falling asleep smoking, is that still an issue? Is that still a major cause of fire?
Yeah, smoking, discarded cigarettes while smoking in bed are definitely a constant threat. A lot of injuries, a lot of deaths occur from people smoking in bed, and we encourage people don't even smoke in their bedroom. That's the best line of defense.
Okay, now, there are some heat sources that are built into our home's design. How do we reduce the risk from those?
Well, when you look at construction, whether you're building new homes or whether you're retrofitting, remodeling, you want to make sure that heating equipment and electrical equipment are installed to manufacturer specifications. Make sure that whatever operating equipment you're going to use is being used as it's supposed to be used in the home.
Okay, let's look at fireplaces or a wood-burning stove. What are some actions we could take to possibly reduce the hazard from those?
Well, real simply, when you're talking about wood-burning stoves and fireplaces, annually they need to be inspected, need to be cleaned. Traditionally, professionals have been called in to clean chimneys to make sure creosote buildup does not occur. A lot of folks never took advantage of that because of the big expense in having someone come in. But today, we're fortunate that if people don't do that, you can actually buy equipment over the counter to where you can do it yourself. But inspecting it annually and cleaning it annually to make sure there's no creosote buildup and that the chimney's working properly is a very important thing that should happen.
Now, can we expand some more on the hazards associated with creosote?
Sure. I mean, all creosote is a byproduct of the wood burning. You know, seasoned wood, hardwood puts out less creosote. But what happens is when this creosote builds up in this flute and it's not cleaned, it does two things. Number one, it doesn't let the heat and smoke vent out properly. Thus, it can damage the flute and cause a fire in your home. In more severe cases, the creosote will actually ignite and burn and cause fire to go up that 15, 20-foot flute and burn at the top of your house.
And Chief, what are some additional precautions we can take when using a fireplace or a wood-burning stove or things of that nature?
Well, one of the big precautions is don't build too big of a fire in this fireplace. Some of the newer equipment out there show a fireplace is very small, and what we kind of tell people is any more than 2 or 3 logs in that fireplace is probably enough. In addition to that, you want to be concerned about spark arresters, so you want to have a screen that's in place and closed when the fire is burning, so if any sparks do come out of the fireplace, it won't ignite a fire. Another big concern is, you know, we talk about heat and fires being around Christmas time. The mantle and hearth area, people seem to hang their Christmas stockings and all of these things that are very combustible. So we would encourage people to remove those items when you're operating the fireplace. Although decorative, it's pretty, it's a very big fire hazard.
Okay, now let's look at appliances. What type of hazards do they present?
Appliances are very important to be aware of. The first things that come to my mind are your clothes dryers, your gas-fired stoves. These things seem to be a big cause in fires because they have open flames. They operate at very hot temperatures. You know, one of the things when you're talking about cooking and a gas-fired stove is never leave it unattended. I think that's the most important safety factor that we can remind people of. And of course, your dryers and things, you want to maintain the lint buildup, keep it clean, make sure that you're only drying clothes. Sometimes children seem to throw things in those dryers like plastic toys, which will definitely cause a fire.
Good information, Chief. When we return, we'll review the heat hazards that electrical systems can pose.
One case that stands out in my mind displaced not one but 2 families. It was a duplex. One family living here had an overloaded extension cord running to an air conditioner unit. This lady left to go to work, left this air conditioner on, and it overloaded, it smoldered, it started a fire which completely destroyed her home and her neighbor's home.
Welcome back. We've been reviewing how to control the element of heat in our home to break up the fire triangle. Chief, how about electrical? What can we do, or what hazards are posed by our electrical systems?
Well, there's several to be concerned with. The first would be arcing. And this occurs when wires are damaged and our wires that are at connection points are not making a good connection, and arcing occurs, and a byproduct of that, of course, is heat that can cause a fire. I think we probably document about 40,000 home fires a year that kill 350 people, and over 1,500 people are injured. So as you can see, electrical fires are a big concern when you're talking about fire protection and, of course, in the lines of trying to build a safe home.
And just how hot can some of those arcs get?
Oh, I mean, an arc can get to, you know, from 5 to 10,000 degrees. I mean, it's extremely hot, extremely dangerous if you're electrocuted. But from a fire standpoint, I mean, it can easily start a fire just by arcing several times.
Now, are there some devices out there that we could use or we could have installed in our home to protect us from those arcs?
Yeah, I mean, in the last few years, the arc fault circuit interrupters are now being installed in homes, and what it does is it senses that change in current and senses that arc and actually cuts the power off, similar to what a circuit breaker does.
And are they very expensive?
No, they're not expensive at all. It's just an addition to the normal receptacles that you put in, and it uses the current wiring in your home.
And what are some other heat-generating hazards that can be found in our home electrical system?
Well, I think the use of 12-gauge wiring versus 14-gauge wiring is important. Some of the other things that we want to look at is when you're installing terminals into your electrical sockets, you'd want to use the screw-on rather than the convenient plug-in. And finally, switches and devices, you want to make sure those are proper for the electrical service that you're running.
And what about overloading? We hear so much about overloading of electrical circuits.
Well, overloading is probably one of the more common hazards in the home, because overloading can occur and actually be sustained in the home well before a fire can start. And it's real simple. You're plugging more things into the wall than the electrical current in the home is able to provide. You're trying to run too many appliances, too many devices, then that 15 amp or 25 amp circuit will allow you to provide.
What are some examples of that?
Real simple. I mean, you go into your kitchen, let's say, and you see a receptacle with 2 plug-ins, and perhaps we've added to where we can plug 3 or 4 devices in, like a food processor, a waffle iron, a coffee pot. Well, all this equipment operating at the same time is requiring more electricity than that receptacle is able to produce. Therefore, you're overloading. The byproduct of overloading, of course, is overheating, which can cause a fire.
So the use of extension cords with multiple prongs, that's not suggested?
Not at all if you're overloading, if you're using more appliances than you should. An extension cord should never be used for permanent wiring, which we see a lot of folks doing that. What the rule of thumb would be is to determine what the demand is on these appliances and make sure it does not overload the ability of that receptacle to give you that demand.
Okay, now, how do you know if you have an electrical problem?
A lot of things happen. Probably more common, people will notice lights flickering. When they turn an appliance on, they'll know a surge in the lights to tell you that something's wrong. In addition to that, of course, breakers tripping. If a breaker trips, then you should, before you reset that breaker, you should find out where the problem is. Is the problem with an appliance or device you've plugged in, or is the problem with the hard wire in your home? And you reset that breaker once you've corrected the problem. If it trips again, then you probably need to have a professional come look at it to make sure that the problem is not something that's really devastating. It may require rewiring or something of that nature. Outside of that, you inspect appliances, inspect devices. I mean, if they're hot to touch, if maybe when you're trying to operate these devices, they don't turn on or don't turn off properly, all of those are indications of electrical equipment that's not working properly.
Okay, now, what should I do if I find a problem or I come to the conclusion, yes, I do have a problem? Say I go to my refrigerator to get a glass of milk and zap.
It shocks you?
Oh, yeah.
That wouldn't be good. Unplug it, disconnect the power, and you know, some appliances can be repaired. Some things now that are electrical are really expendable. I mean, it's probably cheaper just to replace them, you know, destroy them and replace them with a new one. But here again, I really believe anytime you're fooling with electricity, it needs to be done by a professional, someone that's qualified, because, like I said, you might fix it, but the solution you come to may not fix it for good. It may just allow it to go on just a little bit longer before it starts a fire.
So would it be safe to say that you'd recommend adding additional outlets in an existing home or while building a newer home?
Well, I think what you need to do is you need to look at what exactly do you intend to operate in each portion of the home. We're seeing now, and I'll give you an example, when you build a kitchen, now with microwave, hood vents being a combination, we're actually putting different circuits in for that microwave hood vent than what we normally use on the walls in that kitchen, because we know that it pulls more amperage. So I think you need to design your home for what you think your loads are going to be, whether it be in the kitchen, bedrooms, or living rooms of that nature.
Now, power strips, we're starting to see a lot of them used with computers, other electrical appliances. What are some of the problems with those?
Well, I think what needs to be mentioned about power strips is, yes, they do have multiple plug-ins, maybe 6 or 7 receptacles that you could plug cords into. Your usage, your ability to get electricity remains the same. However, we do have a little bit better margin of safety with a power strip because the cord is a lot larger than what an extension cord would be, so the reduction in flow of current does not occur like does an extension cord. However, you're still limited by the capacity of that circuit. So where you can have some better electricity out of it, you need to be careful you don't overload it. Now, most of those are equipped with ground fault detectors and fault detectors that will actually trip it if there is a short or an arc, which is a good safety device. So I'd make sure that you have that device in your power strip.
And what about electrical devices as a source of ignition? What type of problems do they present for the homeowner?
Well, for many years we experienced problems in bathrooms where the ceiling exhaust heater units would actually catch on fire. And a lot of technology has come into play, a lot of upgrade and construction of them, and they're now put in more of a fireproofed container. we had a lot of fires in bathrooms. People would leave these heaters on mistakenly, and they'd run all day long, and they'd catch the attic on fire. That's one big concern that we have, making sure that when you have these operating equipments that produce a lot of heat, like a bathroom hood vent heating unit, that it's installed properly and it's for its intended use. If it's going to be mounted up against a wooden stud, make sure it's in the right box to make that happen safely.
And how about attic fans?
Attic fans are kind of taking a comeback now, and what that is a motor that runs pretty much all the time, depending on where you live. In the hot summer months, it'll run months at a time. That's operating equipment that needs to be considered. Most of those now have devices that'll shut them down when they're overheated if the motor, the bearings in the motor start going out or something of that nature. But here again, it's making sure that you're putting the right equipment for the right usage in your home.
Okay, so you say it'd be a good idea to maybe install a smoke detector in the attic?
Right, a smoke detector is a great line of defense. Of course, heat detection through a monitored alarm system is the best line of defense, but a single station battery-operated smoke detector in your attic is certainly a good minimum safety. So you would hear that thing going off and you would know that there was a fire in the attic, and we'd certainly recommend at minimum you have a battery-operated smoke detector in your attic.
Okay, now let's talk about halogen lights. They've become real popular with automobiles, and now they're starting to become very popular in the homes as well. Do they present any special problems?
Here again, a lot of fires lately have been documented with these halogen lights that put off heats of anywhere from 1,200 degrees to even higher in some cases. These halogen bulbs are very dangerous if combustible materials, like for example a curtain, or if it's near a chair, it will almost instantaneously ignite those type of combustible materials. So you need to pay close attention. Most of them are now in fixtures that kind of put a screen around that are protected from touching those items, but if something was to fall into it, it would certainly cause a fire.
Any suggestions on what we should use or what would be a little bit safer to use in our homes?
Well, I mean, you know, traditionally incandescent light bulbs, fluorescent light bulbs are really great. Things that are low intensity. If you're looking at designing a home where you feel like that the bulbs could come in contact with something, I certainly wouldn't use halogen. I would use halogen bulbs where they can be controlled, maybe in ceilings where they're in certain type of cans that'll keep them from being in contact with anything or igniting. But certainly if they're in a lamp that could get knocked over or something, I would be very concerned about using them in that part of the home.
Thank you, Chief. When we return, we'll see how home builders and homeowners can further disrupt the fire triangle by regulating sources of fuel.
Find ways to make your home more defensible against wildfire. What have you got to lose? Except everything.
We've discussed how to eliminate heat and ignition sources from the fire triangle in our home. Now let's see how homeowners or home builders can help reduce or eliminate fuel for fire. Chief Browning, what are some sources of fuel typically found in our home, around our home, and what can we do to eliminate them or reduce their hazard?
Well, I guess there's three. There's building materials, there's finishes, and there's furnishings. Of course, on building materials, we're talking about the actual construction of the home, wood versus steel, masonry. We're seeing a big trend now to use wood studs instead of, to use steel material instead of wood studs. That's very good. The interior finish of our home, the use of non-combustible materials is very important. And of course, the furnishings, the limited amount of combustibility we can put in our furnishings, the better.
Now let's look at those individually, starting with the exterior building material.
Well, the best exterior would be exterior made of stucco, brick, stone, things that are non-combustible. Even a steel metal construction is even better. Traditionally, we've seen wood frames and exterior wood, vinyl siding, and these type of things that tend to inhibit the growth of a fire if it catches on fire. Vinyl is really to be concerned with because it does burn very rapidly. In fact, a lot of firefighters are injured combating fires with vinyl siding because the plastic actually melts and drips down on them and causes burns.
Well, Chief, let's talk about flame spread or flame spread ratings.
Well, flame spread ratings are a method that we can determine how well a material will deter a fire. In other words, when a flame is put to a piece of material, whether it be a wood or masonry, for examples, how long will it take before that material will actually sustain burning? And they determine a rating with that, and that determines how safe or how less tolerant it is to fire. And it's a very useful tool that we use in building construction, and that's something that you want the best inhibit of fire when you're looking at flame spread rating.
Now, are there some design techniques we can use or incorporate that will help slow the spread of fire?
Sure, there's barriers that we can put in. We can put overhangs over windows that'll stop fire very slowly, to where it requires more burn time to get out of that window and to go to different parts of the building. Having less doors and less windows, less openings, will inhibit the growth of fire. It'll compartmentize fire.
And what about the roof?
Well, our roof is a pretty interesting piece, because that's, when you're looking at a catastrophic fire where you may have multiple buildings involved, typically fire is spread from one building to another by embers that fall on roofs. The typical asphalt slate roof construction is probably the best because it doesn't burn. But we have other types of masonry type roof construction which are really good. Probably the most dangerous would be your wood roofs, which people are kind of getting away from that, but if you live in an area where you have wildland fires, you certainly don't want that type of roof because it's highly combustible, as you can appreciate.
And how are roofing materials rated?
They're rated the same way. You have a Class A through C. Class A would be the most tolerance. Class B would be a moderate tolerance to fire, and Class C would be the worst rating, which you wouldn't want to have. That'd be the rating that would allow it to burn very readily if it was placed in a fire.
Okay, and how about windows?
Windows are very important. The openings in windows are something we need to be concerned with. When we place windows in a building, we need to be concerned with, first from a safety standpoint, are they openable where we can get out? But aside from that, the more windows we have, the more openings, the more chance we have of fire getting out and spreading.
And what about the risk associated with wooden porches or decks?
That's an interesting topic. We see more and more people putting wooden fences up and wooden decks. One of the concerns we want to have with that type of construction is it's a pathway that could actually lead fire to your home. Let's say a wildland fire situation where a deck and a fence could catch on fire. It's going to burn into your home, to your home. So be very cautious about that. Another thing to be concerned about with wood decks is that's kind of a place that we seem to have our gatherings. We're barbecuing, doing outdoor cooking. You need to really consider that and make sure that if you're going to do outdoor cooking, you have a non-combustible pad that you cook on, and whatever the appliance or device is you're cooking with, it certainly does not come in contact with the wood deck or wood fence.
You mentioned a pathway to our home. How about landscaping? Is that a problem?
Landscaping is an issue. Of course, in a wildland environment, they recommend a 30-foot buffer zone around your home, to where if a wildland fire were to penetrate into your home, it would not have vegetation that it could burn to get to your home. Landscaping more commonly is around our homes, and we need to be very cautious about that. The use of daily sprinklers that can keep that material from drying out, keep that vegetation fresh and alive and green, will help a lot, as opposed to vegetation that's allowed to die and burns very easily.
Okay, and how about roof overhangs, stacked piles of firewood? What are some precautions we should take with those?
Similar deal. We probably want to keep our logged firewood 30 feet away from the home as well, far away to where if it does catch on fire, it won't affect our home and extend to our home.
Okay, and say barbecues. I know you mentioned gathering, and we like to gather. Is it a good idea to bring the barbecue onto the carport or onto the porch in the event of a storm or rain?
Absolutely not. That open flame device has started many fires in many people's homes. The same goes with apartment complexes. We've experienced people barbecuing on balconies of apartments. Very dangerous situation, because that barbecue pit in time can have an open flame that would catch the building on fire. And a lot of times it occurs after the event's over and no one's out there attending to that device.
And what about the storage of flammable liquids, say either under the porch or maybe even under the carport?
Well, we would discourage anyone storing any type of flammable liquids, gasoline, things of that nature that you use maybe in maintaining your lawn, in your home or in a building that's attached to your home. It really needs to be in a detached shed away from the living part of your home.
Okay, now let's move inside the home. Let's talk about wall covering and the different types of wall covering out there.
Well, there's a lot of options out there in wall covering, and a lot of it goes through rigorous testing. We talked about flame spread a little while ago. Probably one of your best wall coverings would be your sheetrock, your rated sheetrock, your plaster type construction, of course masonry construction inside. These would all be good types of materials that would inhibit the burning process under normal conditions. Of course, now in your older homes where you have wood siding, paneling, those have always traditionally burned real fast and caused a fire to get out of control a lot quicker.
Okay, explain flashover to me.
Well, flashover is a phenomenon that we see in the firefighting world, and it occurs when everything in the room ignites at one time. In other words, that fire has gotten so hot that it's ignited everything that's combustible. It's brought it to its ignition temperature and it's ignited. It's almost like a firestorm, if you will. And in the fire world, we're very concerned about that, and we employ some new techniques in venting buildings and trying to get into buildings to eliminate flashover. However, with some of the construction that still exists out there and the large amounts of combustible materials in a building, it's a very big danger to firefighters. In fact, it's probably one of the leading cause of firefighter fatalities is a firefighter getting caught up in a flashover, as opposed to some of the other risks that a firefighter is exposed to.
Okay, so can we relate the danger of having wood finish wall covering to flashover and danger and injury to firefighters?
Absolutely. The more combustible the material is, the bigger the fire will be. And certainly wood coverings versus some type of sheetrock or plaster contributes a lot more to the heat and the intensity of that fire.
Okay, so we brought up furniture as a source of ignition or a source of fuel. What can we do, or what's out there available for us? What should we be looking for?
Well, I guess until we can build every piece of furniture out of concrete, which I don't think that's going to be a popular thing in our world, every piece of furniture is combustible. Now, the industry has done a good job. A lot of states have regulated the combustibility of this furniture, making sure that that foam rubbers and fabrics are tested and possibly coated with some fire retardant material, but they're still combustible. And I think one of the newest things that's being recommended in the engineering world is that you perhaps don't try and put all your furniture in one place. Spread your furniture out in a room. Don't have it all in one area to where when there is a fire, it can't feed off each other and catch all these pieces of furniture on fire at one time.
Kind of like a small cluster.
Right, exactly.
Thanks again, Chief.
Okay.
Now let's review our spot quiz.
So let's see how good your fire-safe design sense is. What are the 3 elements needed to create a fire? For a fire to exist, oxygen, heat, and fuel must be present. What are the common sources of heat designed into a home, and how can you make them safer? Fireplaces and wood-burning stoves can create fire hazards if they're not installed correctly. Use fire-resistant materials on walls and flooring around them. Install a metal mesh screen to control embers and glass doors to close off fumes. Also, keep the hearth clear of combustibles. Provide storage for flammable materials away from hot water heaters. On clothes dryers, use metal exhaust ducts. Besides being able to withstand higher temperatures than plastic, they're less likely to trap lint, which can serve as fuel for fires. What heat risks do electrical systems create, and how can you avoid them? Electrical systems can generate heat from arcing, overloaded wiring, and circuits. Install arc fault circuit interrupter, or AFCI circuit breakers, which sense arcing and trip to prevent a fire. When building or remodeling, use thicker 12-gauge wiring instead of the minimum 14-gauge to avoid overloaded wiring. In new homes, install additional outlets to reduce the temptation to overload circuits and reduce the use of extension cords. In existing homes, reduce the number of appliances on one line. Have a qualified electrician inspect your wiring if you experience flickering lights or frequent blown bulbs or fuses. What are the 3 main sources of fuel built into your home, and how can you reduce their risks? Building materials, wall finishes, and home furnishings are the 3 main sources of fuel built into your home. Cement and plaster provide the best protection against fire on exterior walls. Aluminum siding offers more fire resistance than wood. Asphalt shingles are the best all-around low-cost fire-resistant roofing choice. Interior walls of brick or concrete block provide the most fire resistance, while pine wood paneling is the most flammable. Home furnishings should be made of fire-resistant fabrics and kept away from open flame hazards. You can even reduce your home's fire resistance through landscaping by keeping a 30-foot buffer zone to ward off wildfires.
Fire needs the elements of oxygen, heat, and fuel to exist. The actions we take when designing or inhabiting our home can play a tremendous part in the amount of heat and fuel present. Sit down with your contractor if you're building to discuss engineering and fire resistance. And if you're remodeling, check the fire resistance of the materials you're using. Don't make your home a triangle.
A residential sprinkler system is a system that is put into a home to give the occupants time to get out of the house. It's not meant, like a commercial system is, to actually suppress the fire totally. It generally suppresses the fire enough for the occupants to get out. With smoke alarms, you don't want them in areas where you're cooking or you're going to have some heat or you might have a little smoke. So you want to keep those out of the kitchen. But with sprinklers, you want one that's placed somewhere near your range because once it's ignited, that's the first thing you want to put out. I think that the primary benefit of having a sprinkler system in your home is the peace of mind that knowing that your family is not going to perish in a fire. Secondarily, I think the protection of your property is also a very valuable reason to have a sprinkler system also. And on top of that, you can get a discount to your homeowner's insurance. The system that I have in my home, I got because working with the fire marshal's office in my 6 years there, dealing with statistics that I received from the fire departments, I've never seen a fatality that's occurred in a home that had sprinklers.
Despite our best efforts at engineering out fires, sometimes through carelessness or faulty appliances, a fire may find its way into our home. But there are still design strategies we can use to control or contain a fire should one break out.
Let's test your home design knowledge on controlling fires. What features can you engineer into your home to help control or contain a fire? How much do home sprinkler systems cost, and how effective are they? We'll be back later in the show to review these questions and answers.
Welcome back. Joining me again is Chief Butch Browning. Chief, what if a fire was to make it into our home? Are there some design techniques or some things we can do to reduce or eliminate its potential risk?
Well, absolutely. I think a thing to understand is how a fire burns. And a fire burns real simple. It burns up and out, and it seeks a path of least resistance. As a fire is burning, it produces a tremendous amount of acrid smoke that's very toxic and very deadly. And I'll give you an example. A garbage can burn in your kitchen can produce enough smoke to fill the room up in a matter of minutes while the fire is still in the garbage can. So as this fire is burning up and out, there are some design things that could help you to escape and maybe self-termination of the fire. One of the things is large rooms, high ceilings, maybe having beams in the room that'll inhibit that flow of smoke and flow of heat throughout the building. We talked about construction. We talked about the low combustibility. If the flame cannot find something combustible to burn, then it's going to eventually go out.
Now, are there some other things we can do that possibly would reduce or contain a fire in our home?
Absolutely. There's a lot of things that we could do that would reduce and contain. Outside of the interior finishes that we've spoken about, there are some protection features we can put in our home with smoke detection, automatic systems like residential sprinkler systems, which I know we're going to talk about, that make things a lot easier to extinguish the fire while it's still small.
And what about walls as barriers?
Walls make a great barrier, and in fact, in the commercial industry, you've probably heard of 1 hour and 2 hour firewalls. And what that is, it's a certain type of sheetrock construction that's rated to inhibit the fire from one room to the other because of this barrier that occurs. And here again, in most residential codes, we see the use of fire barriers, maybe a little bit lesser time frame that we see in commercial buildings. In addition to that, it extends to our doors. The doors that we put in have certain ratings on them. They're made out of maybe steel or hard products that don't burn very easily.
Chief, what would be some good locations for wall barriers in a home?
Certainly, one of the areas that we're very concerned about is our function areas, our kitchen, our living room area. We want to put a barrier between there and perhaps our sleeping areas, our bedrooms. In addition to that, another good barrier that we need is burying our utility room, our dryer area, our workroom from the other parts of our house. And basically what a fire barrier does, it kind of compartmentizes each portion of the house, so if there is a fire, it's going to inhibit the growth and enough time for people to escape properly.
And what about attic doors?
Attic doors are a big concern because if you have an improper attic door that doesn't seal or comes down real easily in a fire, what it does, it allows the flames to get into the attic very quickly. And the downside to that, or the bad thing about that, is once a fire gets into an attic, it has a compartment that's well oxygenated, that's readily able to burn because it's unprotected wood in most cases. Typically when a fire gets in the attic, it's usually a catastrophic loss.
Thanks, Chief. We'll be right back to discuss a home fire control system that's showing up more and more in new homes.
Did you know that sprinkler systems have been around since the late 1800s? Although they were first used in commercial settings like businesses and industry, sprinklers are now affordable for use in private homes. They add about the same cost as a new carpet to your home, and many insurance companies will provide discounts if you have them installed. Check with your insurance agent. Protect your home and your wallet.
Welcome back. We're discussing design features that control and contain a fire in a home. Chief, what about residential fire sprinklers?
Residential fire sprinklers are probably one of the most important things that we can promote in our country today. See, we live in a very false sense of security when we promote a lot of the features of smoke detection and those types of building construction and things that we've talked about, because it gives people a sense that it's going to prevent a fire. That doesn't prevent a fire. Those are designed to alert the occupants so they can get out and their life be saved. Where a fire sprinkler system, if it's installed properly and maintained properly, it puts the fire out in many cases before the 911 call is even made. So residential sprinkler systems are where it's at. It's what we need to promote. It's the ultimate level of safety in all buildings, including residential, where we know 80% of the people are dying.
Okay, now explain how a sprinkler system can break up that fire triangle.
Well, real easy. What a sprinkler system does, it's installed in each room, and its head operates individually. It's activated by heat, so it's not the theory of if there's a fire, all 15 heads are going to go off. That's not the case. Most fires are extinguished with only one head dispersing water. The heat of the fire actually causes the head to disperse the water. It disperses about 10 or 11 gallons a minute per water, as opposed to maybe 95 to maybe 200 gallons a minute that a fire hose disperses. So the water consumption that it uses is very, very minimal. And when it goes off, it helps in, number one, through oxygen, it produces steam. In the fuel line, it soaks the fuel, the combustibles, to where they won't burn. And of course, it's water, so it reduces the temperature, it reduces the heat. It's the ultimate level of protection. It requires no intervention by a person. Many lives have been saved across our country with commercial fire sprinklers. Residential is a new line that's out there. It's a lot cheaper. It can be put in your home for, less than 1% of the cost of your home. Several dollars a square foot is what it costs. It's a great line of protection, and it's certainly something we encourage everyone to consider, especially building a new home. It can be retrofitted into your old home.
Now, one of the concerns that I'm sure a lot of homeowners have is that they're ugly. What can they do to possibly make them fit the decor of the home a little bit more?
Well, technology is where it's at. Technology makes them not ugly anymore. You can now purchase sprinkler heads that are called concealed heads. And what they do is they're actually recessed in the ceiling, and it's a little wall plate that's the color of your ceiling. A white ceiling, it's a little white plate, and unless you looked real hard, you wouldn't even notice it. Sprinkler heads are concealed now to where no one even knows they're there.
Okay, so we've dispelled the myth about how damaging they are to your property as far as water damage is concerned. We've gotten rid of the myth about them being so ugly. Just how effective are they?
They're extremely effective. What they do and what they've done in commercial buildings is there has never been a multiple fire fatality in a properly sprinkled building in the history of our country. And some sprinkler systems are over 100 years old. In addition to that, what they do is they're going to put the fire out while it's still small, while it's still able to be kept in its point of origin, the exact spot it started, it's going to put it out, as opposed to a fire engulfing a room, a flashover scenario like we talked about. You'll never have that kind of situation in a properly sprinkled building.
Now, would you recommend using them in conjunction with smoke detection systems?
Absolutely, because the smoke detection is what's going to alert you if there's an emergency. Typically what's going to happen is the smoke detector is going to alert you after the fire has been put out. The only smoke that it sensed was the smoke that occurred in the initial few minutes of the fire. Once that smoke detector goes off, in most cases the fire is going to be out. You're going to have to disconnect the water, and you're going to have to mop up clean water versus going through the rubble of everything you have being destroyed that we see in fires that are not sprinkled.
Okay, let's look at the cost again. What did you say adding a sprinkler system would possibly cost a homeowner?
Well, new construction, you're looking at about 1% of the total cost of construction, and experts tell us a dollar, maybe $3 a square foot is what it costs. Retrofitting seems to be about that. It might be just a little more depending on how hard it is to get into your ceilings and whatnot. And the good thing about residential sprinkler systems is you don't have to have a licensed plumber or a certified sprinkler technician to install it. It's a do-it-yourself type application. Residential sprinkler systems are now bought over the counter, and they can be put in your home just as you put sprinkler systems in your yard.
So in comparison, it's probably about the same amount as installing new carpet throughout the home?
Exactly, or maybe even less. And gosh, think of what it does. It's going to save your family's life. To say nothing about saving your possessions, which are important to you, but I think everyone agrees that saving the life is what's most important.
Let's look at some additional benefits. What does it do for your insurance premiums?
Well, we're certainly seeing insurance companies recognizing that protection reduces the loss of property in a fire. So you're seeing some folks are telling us in a matter of 3 to 4 years, the cost of putting that sprinkler system was actually saved in less insurance premium. So they actually paid for it, the sprinkler system, in 3 to 4 years. It's amazing.
Will it increase my property value as well?
Absolutely. It's a technique in your home. It's an amenity to your home that makes it safer, just as a security system will, just as certain types of nice interior things like tile and things do to your home. A sprinkler system will certainly increase the value of your home.
And how about in rural area? Any special considerations for rural areas?
Well, it's even more important in rural areas where perhaps fire protection is not in the 1.5 mile response zones, or response from a fire department may be several miles away because you live outside of cities or towns. So here again, it's an automatic fire protection that's going to work immediately, and we certainly recommend it.
Thanks again, Chief.
Okay.
Now let's see how you did on your spot quiz.
Let's see how you did on your spot quiz. What features can you engineer into your home to help control or contain a fire? High ceilings and walls can sometimes prevent a small fire from growing into a large one, since heat dissipates by the time it reaches the taller ceiling. Also, the larger the room, the longer a fire takes to reach flashover, the condition when a fire generates enough heat to cause the contents in the room to ignite. Barriers like fire-rated doors between your living area and the garage and attic can provide additional protection. How much do home sprinkler systems cost, and how effective are they? On average, the installation of sprinklers in new construction is estimated to make up around 1% of the total cost, about the cost of new carpeting. Also, 90% of fires are contained by the operation of just one sprinkler head, and the combination of sprinklers and smoke detectors can cut your risk of dying by 82%.
Preventing fires through the design and choice of building materials is the first line of defense for a homeowner against fire. But should a fire break out, if we also have ways to control and contain it engineered in, we further increase our chances of survival. Emphasize the importance of fire safety to your contractor, and if you're a do-it-yourselfer, consult with your local fire department for suggestions and resources.
We responded to a house fire where an occupant was cooking in the kitchen. The cooking material on the stove boiled over and caught on fire. This person grabbed the extinguisher that was in the kitchen. She was unable to get the safety tab off the extinguisher, so she was running around the house looking for a pair of scissors to cut it off. The fire at that time, she said, was very small. She could have put it out. She eventually gave up and left the home. The kitchen was severely damaged and did quite a bit of damage to the home by not knowing how to handle a fire extinguisher.
The biggest problem we see with occupants and fire extinguishers is where they store them at. Most people store their fire extinguishers near their stove or near their hot water heater or their dryer. Well, if you've got a fire on your stove, well, you're going to be able to get to your fire extinguisher to use it. We've seen plenty of house fires where the front end of the kitchen or the utility room was consumed with a fire extinguisher hanging on the wall. They just could not get to the fire extinguisher.
No home can ever be truly fireproof. You can control the source of ignition in your home and reduce the available fuel, but the variable of human carelessness can still create a fire. 85% of all fire deaths occur in the home, the place where we feel the safest. We've seen design practices that help to control a fire once it starts, but how about ways to protect ourselves if a fire breaks out?
So how familiar are you with home fire protection devices? Let's see. How many smoke detectors should you install in your home? Where should you locate carbon monoxide detectors? Where should you never position a fire extinguisher? Stay tuned. We'll review the answers later.
Built-in fire prevention and control features are our home's first line of defense against a fire. But what can we engineer in to protect ourselves and our families should a fire break out? How about it, Chief?
We're real easy. I mean, we need to have unobstructable paths throughout our home to escape. We need to know where the exits are, and the exits need to be accessible. We need to consider in building these homes that we use 32 to 36-inch doorways, thinking about elderly people, disabled people being able to get through these doors. Small doors are a thing of the past. Also, our windows. A window to each bedroom is certainly great, but the window needs to be large enough and needs to be constructed low enough to where when you open that window, you can easily escape out that window if there is a fire.
How about burglar bars? Are burglar bars a problem?
Burglar bars are a problem. Technology, of course, has allowed burglar bars to be hinged where they can open with certain unlocking devices. We want to take those into consideration. If you have to have burglar bars, make sure they can be open because they can't obstruct you from getting out. Another thing is doors, exit doors. Let's build exit doors that have the thumb latches on the inside so it doesn't require a key. I can remember we had a fire death one time we experienced an elderly person, and we found her lying in the kitchen dead, holding the keys by the door because she couldn't open the door. So our speculation was she was trying to get the key to open the door, and she perished in the fire. Had that have been a thumb lock, she could have opened it and probably be living today to enjoy life.
All because she was more security conscious than fire safe. How about the comparisons between the possibility of being broken in on by a criminal or being a victim of a fire?
Oh, you've got a much bigger chance of being a fire victim than being robbed.
Okay, now let's look at second story exits. Would you suggest anything?
Well, you can buy over the counter again chain ladders that can allow you to escape out. One of the things that we will tell you about using chain ladders, you need to train yourself with it because children can deploy them, children can climb down them. But if you do purchase chain ladders, try them out. Make sure that it goes down the side of your home like it's supposed to, and try and climb out because it's certainly a good secondary means of egress if needed.
Okay, now let's talk about smoke alarms and smoke detectors. How important are they?
The utmost important. We know that in some cases less than half the homes in our country have operating smoke detectors, and that's a terrible thing. When you look at the price of a battery-operated smoke detector is under $10. Having a smoke detector in your home, having it in each level of your home, having it in every bedroom of your home, having one in the attic and one in the basement, all those are your first line of defense. A smoke detector is going to sense a fire in about the first 2 minutes of flame. And shortly after it goes off, you have less than 2 minutes to escape before most fires will fill your whole home up with smoke that you won't be able to see, you won't be able to breathe. So what that tells you, in about 5 minutes into a fire, if you didn't have a smoke detector, you're probably going to be incapacitated and could die.
And how does a monitor system increase our chance of survival?
Well, it helps out a lot because when you're not home, it's going to make that call to an alarm station that's going to in turn call the fire department to get the firefighting forces in action. And even if you are home, it's going to make that automatic call where in many cases people forget to use the 911 access and make that call when there's an emergency.
Okay, now let's talk about alarms for the hearing impaired.
Certainly. Here again, technology. We now have strobe lights on our alarm systems, and we also have louder alarm systems out there that can help people who are hearing impaired. And it's a great great tool. Most commercial buildings have now had to upgrade with the latest fire codes that's being dictated to us.
Now, I know we're focusing on fire, but how big a risk is carbon monoxide?
The last 10 years, carbon monoxide has been a growing concern. Fuel-fired stoves and appliances in our homes have produced carbon monoxide, and it's now got to levels that it's really concerning us. Of course, you can buy carbon monoxide detectors that'll actually alert when an unhealthy level is reached in your home, and the reaction to that should be turn off all your fuel-fired appliances when it happens, open windows and doors and vent it, and then call someone in to come inspect those appliances to make sure they're working properly.
And is it important to have a portable fire extinguisher in the home as well?
Absolutely. Of course, the important thing about a fire extinguisher is not just the ability of going to buy it, because some people think because I went and bought it, I now have the acquired knowledge to use it, and that's not the case. Fire extinguishers are designed to put out witness fires, and what that means is a fire that you see start. You see it at the point that it started, like that garbage can burning, or like that area by the receptacle where your refrigerator is located. It's designed to put out that witness fire. It's not designed for you to walk into a building that's the entire kitchen's on fire and try and use it. It will not put those kind of fires out. So proper training is important, because they teach you to keep yourself between the fire and the exit. They teach you how to actually operate the fire extinguisher, and they teach you when it's time to leave it. And what I would encourage people to do is purchase fire extinguishers and contact your local fire department, because they're a world of knowledge on how to properly and safely use a fire extinguisher and where to keep it. A lot of people don't know where to keep their fire extinguisher. And it's just so important that we have them, but we're also trained properly to use them.
Okay, you mentioned location and where to keep it. What are some of the common problems that homeowners make about locating a fire extinguisher?
Well, you know, some ladies out there think that fire extinguishers are ugly, so they don't want it on the countertop in the kitchen next to their nice decorative food pantry. So it seems to get put under the sink behind everything else, and that's not where it needs to be. It actually needs to be located near your kitchen, because that's where most fires are going to be. But it needs to be between that area and your exit door. So when you retrieve that extinguisher, you have the ability to go to the exit door if that fire is so big that you can't extinguish it. In addition to that, it's a good idea to have one maybe in your master bedroom. So if you do wake up to a fire in the middle of the night and you need that, not necessarily to put the fire out, but maybe to combat fire, to make you an exit passageway. Having it in the utility room, the storage areas of your home, all those areas are really good. In commercial buildings, we try and have them within 75 feet of anywhere in the building, if that'll kind of give you an idea of how accessible they are.
Chief Brown, I want to thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you very much.
Some very valuable information.
Thank you.
Now let's see how you did on your spot quiz.
Let's see how you did on your spot quiz. How many smoke detectors should you install in your home? Have one smoke detector installed on every level of your home, including the basement and attic. Change the batteries annually and test them monthly. Where should you locate carbon monoxide detectors? At a minimum, a single detector should be placed on each sleeping floor, with an additional detector in the area of any major gas-burning appliance. Where should you never position a fire extinguisher? Never hang a fire extinguisher directly above a stove or anything else likely to catch fire. Also, never locate them between you and a potential fire source. Locate them near an exit, high enough from children, but within easy reach for adults. Study the instructions listed on your extinguisher and consult with your local fire department for training. Multi-purpose rated extinguishers for type A, B, and C fires are your best choice for your home.
They say your home is your castle. By using building practices that disrupt the fire triangle, control the spread of fire, and alert the residents to a fire emergency, you can create your own fortress against fire. Thank you for joining us. I'm Chris Spurlock, and those are today's Facts on Fire.